Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode number 4 of the Dharma podcast, a podcast in pursuit of purposeful living. I'm your host, Tayloe Winchester, also known as TW, and as always, super grateful that you've taken some time out of your day to stop by and tune into this podcast. All right, episode 4, I am excited to interview Sam Tayloe from the band Time Sawyer. Sam is the frontman, I would say, for the band. He's a singer-songwriter. I think they collaborate on writing some of those tunes, but he is been the frontman in the sense of their current configuration for Sam on Sundays under these COVID-19 times that we're in. So check out the band. Sam is a super cool dude, as they all are in Time Sawyer. I really enjoy hanging with those cats. So I'm excited for today's episode. I hope you'll enjoy it as well. And without further ado, let's get right down to digging into some Dharma digs. Sam, what's up, buddy?
Not too much.
Mr. Sam Tayloe.
Excited to be talking to you via Zoom for sure
man.
today. That's like I was just saying, this is my setup for the rest of the afternoon. I'm excited to be able to talk a little bit. We chatted a couple weeks ago about enjoying it seems like there's a real, I wouldn't say a disconnect, but really not being able to see people is definitely I think there's been a ebb and flow for all of that. Like some of it feels a little bit relaxing, and then I'm starting to hit another point of like, I need to get out and see all my friends again. I mean, for sure. I mean, it's I've tried to stay in contact with a lot of people during our extended stay here at the house, but it's just not really the same. And we felt that with being able to talk on the phone a couple of times. It's just good to stay connected, man, especially in what we do. It's hard to miss the folks that you're used to seeing out nightly.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. And I mean, we're starting to see a little bit
For
of,
sure.
what is it, phase 2.5,
I think that's what I heard. Yeah.
working our way back in a little. So, yeah, but you guys have stayed busy. Tom Sawyer can't play together as a band currently, but the Sam on Sunday shows, you guys are all being pretty active there. While it's featuring you being Sam, the front man, we'll say, of the band, but it's, everybody's involved, and I know you got a great team around you. So let's start talking a little bit about that. What all you got going on with Sam on Sundays? You want to tell everybody about that?
Yeah. We've really enjoyed being able to have something to do in this period, being able to, well, I'm sure that's actually probably not the right way to say that. We had to find something to do is the best way to say it. And we also have enjoyed that it's been able to really unlock a little bit of creativity and stuff that it's really actually helped us to connect, to go back to that. Is I've been able to reach out to a lot of different friends and people that really weren't friends of mine yet. I'm hoping we're working on being friends with them. And I'm really appreciating their art. We do a lot of different segments on the show. And that's on Sunday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern, if we're doing a little push here. We can watch on YouTube or Facebook from the Time Sawyer channel or page, whichever your platform is you choose there. And we've really had a lot of fun having a can-to-can guest, like songs down the line is what we're calling it. And had a lot of people, you and Jeremy and the Elonzo Wesley guys were joining the show. I guess as a trio, we were missing at least one.
Yeah.
I feel like, yeah.
Missing Alicia,
Yeah,
Akima,
right.
as we call her, as she likes to be called.
Hell
Yeah,
yeah.
I love that segment, man. The can to can. It's super
Thank you.
creative, and incorporating obviously some other people into the program, and spreading that message and introducing your fans to new music and new art, and kind of that collaborative process, which is really cool.
Yeah, we that's been really fun. Again, trying to connect that back. It's been fun to be able to say, "Hey, man," or "Hey, gal, how are y'all doing? Good to see you." And would you be interested in doing something on our show? We're not, and it's, I mean, by no means are we rocking the internet right every Sunday night, but we've definitely grown the show quite a bit since it has started. It's really come to show a community feel, and we think we can really give back a little bit to the folks that like I said, are already our buddies that we've met on the road, or folks that we maybe had some plans to meet on the road this year, and I had some shows canceled. Our buddy Chris Frisina in the Chapel Hill or that triangle area. I'm actually not sure where he lives, maybe Durham. And we had some shows scheduled for this time, and so it was great to be able to just, I mean, again, even at a small piece of it, it was good to have a show with him last Sunday. He was our guest, so it was a lot of fun, a great song. That's been fun. I really have been oddly, emotional is probably not the right word, but watching some of these people play, when they send me a video early in the week, it's like, oh man, this is helping me to get through the week, to be able to have a little something that we used to do every single night, go find somebody at the Muse in town or neighborhood theater, or travel to go find a friend. And it's been fun. It has definitely helped me quite a bit.
Yeah, I mean it's creative, and you guys, the think the phrase of the year has to be pivot, or not phrase, but term of the year has to be pivot. And I think you guys have done a great job of remaining relevant. I mean, we struggle as Elonzo Wesley kind of coming up with the concept of how do you stay relevant in all of this, and the live stream, weekly stream, I mean, without adding in, restructuring a little bit to add more depth to the program. I think it feels challenging to kind of stay relevant, or not to stay relevant, but to do it every week without having something unique and different about it. And you guys have done a great job of that. So,
well, thank you, man. I do think I guess you can look at anything. I think the idea of your podcast here is a prime example of that. Is we really all need to be looking for ways to grow and reach out. I mean, there's so many walls that you're going to hit as we continue to move forward in this life, much less a pandemic. And I think that it's just fun to keep. I mean, I guess, I don't know. And to me, I feel like if someone were to ask me, like, what are y'all doing? It's like, we can't do anything, man. We're just sitting here at the house. It's like, I don't think that's true.
Pity party. Yeah.
Yeah. It's definitely really digging deep and trying to do something, I think, has been the easiest way for me to find out more about myself in a more central way of me, but also it's been able to introduce me to a lot of people that I don't think I would have met otherwise. And I think you kind of forge, I really think, in the most positive of sense, who you meet in this world is how we continue to the connections you make and kind of nurture. And it's not really someone, I think that usually is a negative term. Someone's like, it must be someone that got you this job or this opportunity. And I think most of the time that's true, but it's not that you just like, oh, somebody loves Tayloe Winchester, that's probably why he got to do this thing. It's like, well, Taylor's been talking to this guy for a year and a half, and they've been hanging out, and they're buddies. And whatever it is, it's just a appreciation of the craft. And it's a really cool thing to see people. I wouldn't say you weed out people, because I'm always trying to add to the circle that we have, but you're able to start to figure out who wants to keep pushing forward, and that kind of keeps you feeling motivated as well.
Yeah, and I mean, in challenging times, we all start to learn in different ways about, as you mentioned, about ourselves, and this the whole pandemic in 2020 has really shifted for me an opportunity to really, to your point, go a little bit more internal, spending more time kind of alone because we have to, but also trying to be productive with that time. And for me, that's been really really cool and a good process. And I've been thinking about a podcast, a few different concepts. This is one I finally landed on, and I think a lot of that has to do with where we are in the current situation, but then also in the sense of just the political climate and the kind of what I call the COVID craze. I mean, there's, outside of the pandemic scenarios, there's also just a lot of emotion flying around with a lot of people this day. And I think, if nothing else, my hope with this whole podcast concept is really to encourage conversation, but also one of the quotes I use and talking about it is from Ram Dass, and it's like basically saying that everybody is a guru, and if you just listen, and that term guru gets thrown around a little too much sometimes, but for me it's like we can all learn from each other, but in order to do that, we have to either stop ourselves from either talking over or projecting our ideals or our opinions on everybody else, and really look at it more of like, how can we engage in a productive conversation. And
for sure,
it's a tough time for everybody, and everybody has their own little things that are fighting. So if nothing else, hopefully this opportunity just to chat a little bit with folks and find out what keeps you happy, what keeps you motivated, and keeps you searching for that purpose within the art and the work that you do is what I'm all about here with this. So I appreciate you being here.
I'm really happy to be a guest. I appreciate the time.
Yeah. So let's dive in a little bit of your background and Time Sawyer's background, kind of how you guys came to be a band, maybe when you started writing music, what led you down that path. And then, and we'll talk a little bit more later about some of the Dharma dig concepts that I want to dig into. So.
Awesome. Yeah. Let me, I still didn't turn off this air conditioner. Excuse me. and I want to make sure that we're giving prime content here. So let me make sure we get this taken
Everybody
care
loves
of.
the sounds. No worries. A little background buzz.
And like I knew there was some humming in there. And it was his hallway AC. If it'll cut off, let's see.
Yeah, for those of you that are maybe new to Sam and the Time Sawyer crew, I was introduced to Sam and that crew. I mean, I was familiar with the band from being here in Charlotte, North Carolina, but having joined up with Elonzo Wesley, that was actually the first show that we played together as a quote unquote band, I guess you would say. We played with you guys at the neighborhood theater, and
Dude, that's awesome. I didn't know that.
yeah, I mean Dennis. So Dennis, our bass player, had played with Jeremy previously in like the prior formation of Elonzo, which was more of an indie
Yeah.
rock band. Yeah. And then I ran into Jeremy and was like, hey, if you ever want a mandolin player with your new project, love your stuff, would love to play with you. And so we played a show as a duo, and then he was like, well, I know this bass player. And fast forward, then that was I think we rehearsed once, one night with Dennis. So it was interesting. It was a lot of fun
Dude,
though.
that's awesome. I really did not even know that. And you could have fooled me. There's no
Yeah.
doubt. That was a fun show. What year are we saying that was?
I think it was 2016, maybe 17. I feel like
Was
maybe it
I
was
didn't go
2017
ahead.
because I think summer of 2017 was when we started playing with Alicia. I think. Um, but Dennis always jokes. He was like, "Yeah, I didn't know who this guy was," talking about me because I was wearing like this Charlotte Hornets beanie, and Dennis is not necessarily like your sports forward guy that really pays attention. So he thought I was like probably some scrub that's like a sports guy that knows nothing about
Right.
music. But yeah, it was a fun
Yeah.
night.
He's like, can't believe that this guy plays the mandolin. You know what a mandolin is?
Yeah,
I
yeah,
still didn't get this thing. It's gonna bother me. I'm gonna go. It's right here outside the store. Cut to your sponsor's ad or something.
yeah. We'll switch over. Edit that part out. All right, and we're back with Sam
We're back.
Tayloe from Time Sawyer. Thanks to that sponsor break. This show is sponsored by Sam on Sundays.
Oh yeah, it sure is. You think we won't mention this week, or whenever you tell us to mention it? You
Yeah,
tell me.
I'll let you know. I'll let you
Yeah,
know.
please do.
So yeah, let's get back to tell me a little bit. Tell the listeners a little bit more about what led you down the songwriting path and the formation of Time Sawyer and kind of how you guys became what you are today.
Yeah, I think it sounds almost a little bit like a cop out. I would just, or that's not. I think a lot of people, maybe that's the better way to say it. A lot of people start to stretch a creative muscle a little more when transitioning out of a early relationship or finding something out about. I guess I wouldn't say like a huge shaking moment, but just like I felt it, me in a long time high school relationship ended in whatever the band started in 2011. So somewhere a little before then, I started using songwriting to try and maybe find out some more about myself or find ways to express some things that I didn't feel the need to go tell somebody right away, or things that maybe more or less I'm working through. And it for sure helped. It was definitely something that I found a way to connect better with me, and maybe what I was feeling, I needed to write that stuff down to say like, oh yeah, cool. Like it, a lot more settling in a way. And I think I've always written songs that tend to sit on the edge of like, oh, that's a sad song. Or my favorite songs are emotive, sad songs per se. And I think that to me shows that's the most power to me, is to show how people are, well, just it's the most creative. Well, I can't say the most creative. It's the most the feeling I get the most from that is someone showing me kind of an importance in the reason they've chosen to do this. So kind of just started writing a couple songs that way. I to all four of us were at UNC Charlotte in 2011. The original guys that were the first part of the band, first four fellas, didn't have a bass player for the first. It'd be embarrassing if I can think of like as many years that we didn't have a bass player.
What was that lineup? I mean,
It
guitar,
was
obviously Houston banjo.
Yeah, Houston and I are the two from the original group still, and Houston North plays banjo and sings harmony. We had acoustic most of the time, or electric guitar player and a drummer.
Okay.
And uh, yeah, for a very long time, our setup was that. And we, I mean, I'd say a couple years at least, we had my mother and Houston's mom. Actually, Houston's dad and mom played bass on different tracks for quite a few of our probably first three records.
Okay. So
Um,
so there's some musical background within both yours and Houston's family. That's kind of
for
how you
sure.
cool.
Yeah, my mother, Amy, she went to Meredith College and graduated with a degree in, I guess, an organist. I'm not sure if she had pianist as well, but she is that for a long time. She did a lot more of that playing. She still does some set days. She plays Easter Sunday at our church
Nice.
and does a lot of different things, that doing a lot of filling in from a small town. We're from Elkin, North Carolina. So there's a lot of, hey, our family's going to the beach this week. Can Amy play the organ? Our organist is out. So she played the keys on a couple songs on a couple albums. So it really was an odd family band for a little while,
Nice.
and a lot of fun. When we probably 2 years or so before we really had a bass, or realized just the huge importance of having a bass player. And now we're so lucky to have Court Winter from Winston-Salem, who's a long member of the band at this point. And he is, for my money, maybe the best bass player that I get to hang out or see play on any form of regulation. And it's been a lot of fun. So started with a four-piece and played a lot around. We kind of did start touring pretty early. I knew that's something that I wanted to do, uh, getting out and trying to see just what that was, or being able to see if that's something we thought we could do. We played Bristol Rhythm and Roots in 2012. I think that was a really big moment for me. I guess I can't speak for the band, but as you know, that's such a great festival. Your work with it now. How long have you guys been working with Bristol?
Yeah, so I started working with them. What would that have been? We're in 2020, so that was at the end of 2018. So as they were rolling out some of the ticket, the it was before the lineup because the plan back then. Yeah, so they were just rolling out. It was November of 2018. I worked with them on the first project I worked with them on was rolling out the marketing for some of the digital marketing stuff for that 2019's festival. I guess that was last year. So
Oh yeah, man.
yeah, great
So
festival, and you guys fit perfectly up there. I mean, it makes a lot of sense for you to be there.
oh
So
yeah, well, we've always loved it and have been very fortunate to. I think being able to do that so early, I would, looking back, I'm sure I would really be just like cringing at our performance. But in my head, I still can look at it as a positive. We played at State Street. Was that no? What's the bar? State Line.
state line,
State
yeah.
Line.
Well, there's
We
like
played.
I don't know 20 stages, so it's hard to keep up with there. Yeah.
Yeah, we were inside the State Line bar there on the corner, and I broke a guitar string, and for whatever reason, and again, I don't consider myself in any way some kind of like pyrotechnics performer, like trying to frontman anything. That's just really not what uh, I get centered around. But I broke a string, and for whatever reason, ended up jumping off the stage. And there was people in the front, and automatically, thank God, somebody was just like, "Yeah, we're definitely dancing." And so we finished this instrumental out of the song with me and the folks in the front. And if I can find a picture, I'd love to find that. We had one a long time ago, but it kind of changed, not necessarily that exact moment, but being at this festival and seeing really the avid music fans that exist in the world, that
Mhm.
I'm not sure we necessarily deserve to be at that festival in 2012, but it was, a lot of people listening didn't let us know that. They were very happy to be at our show and very happy they walked in, or I wasn't aware of you guys. And it's like, well, you couldn't hardly be. We have hardly ever played anything.
Yeah.
But it's just been great. That was kind of a big moment for the band and trying to get out and grow. And I think we probably use that as a big stepping stone to say, well, that really lit a fire into what we wanted to do. And especially Houston and I, he's a huge. I definitely don't have a better business partner than, I've never had anybody to work with like Houston, that we really understand. Well, maybe it's just a push to want to grow and do something positive and see some of that growth in that. And we've, just like anyone, we've definitely had our ups and downs in growing from 2011 to here, but we're definitely on a serious path. I mean, Sam on Sundays, he's just as big a part as that as I am. Luckily, he was on the show last week. That was the first one we were able to do together, and it was a lot of fun. So it's been really fun growing that. I would say we did a probably had almost a year. Maybe it was only Luke Mears, a really good guitar player, a friend of ours from Elkin as well. Uh, we had like a duo moment when we were transitioning, Houston and I. Probably for a year, that was the band was pretty much a duo. But we had pretty early on Luke also joined that, so played most of our shows as a trio, banjo and two acoustic guitars, harmony, and kind of started really making that what we wanted to push, is making sure the songs were written and communicating what we wanted to communicate, and then worked on making sure from the ground up with just the strings we were able to kind of put in what we wanted to put in. And the way you talked about Dennis was really neat. That's our drummer, Jordan Nelson from Winston as well. He would come out and see us when we were in this duo stage at the Foothills Tasting Room, which is right near his house. And it's just been, we've been really blessed as a group, because Jordan started as a semi fan. I hate to even say that, because no, it's like, yeah, I joined the band I like, which he has been all over the place, played with so many groups, and he's always been such an integral part of the music scene in Winston. It's great to see Court and him and how connected they are with their music community, and how I feel like we're connected with ours. And that really helps to add to that family circle we look for in music and trying to keep pushing forward. So it's been neat to grow to where we are now. We have I'm trying to think if we had another change in there. We had a friend play bass for a while, kind of coming in and coming out, building back to that full band. Jordan was a full-time member of the band, so we went back to having kind of four with different bass players cycling in and out, and then added Court maybe a little less than a year after Jordan joined the band. So since early 2017, I think we have had this lineup, and had two different guitar players that are really good friends of ours that we have. Luke's taken a break from really touring, which we all are now, but we had a good buddy, Damon Atkins, a Nashville fella that does some touring with us now, and have had Dan Hood locally. We've talked a lot about playing. He was another guy that was going to get out and go with us for a little bit on a tour here and there, and of course we didn't do that, but we've really enjoyed that aspect of kind of branching out, but keeping our kind of core group that kind of makes a family band decisions and works together. That's always kind of our effort, our space.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously trying to keep a band together from a longevity standpoint is it's never easy. I mean, there's going to be challenges that go along with that. So, I commend you guys on what you've done, and everybody that I've met with the band. I've gotten to know you in Houston a little bit more so than the other cats, but
right.
You're all really good people, and I think that helps. If you kind of all have this similar approach to life, I guess, if you will. And I'm curious, has there been conversations about, obviously you mentioned Luke maybe pulled back out of the touring component of it, but with you in Houston, you guys have from the beginning said this is kind of the direction we want to go. But what is it about that and or the conversations amongst the members of the band that also keep you motivated to do that, even though knowing that sometimes you hit the road and you barely make enough money to cover the expenses, but like,
for sure,
what drives that desire? And do you, I assume as I do find with creating music in general, but also performing it in front of people, there's this sense of purpose that comes out of that it's not easy to quantify or to even articulate, I guess. But is there anything that you guys have talked about amongst each other that like keeps you guys going every year and growing?
I'm not sure anyone's ever phrased it that way to me, but I do think, without, again, just jumping back to that family dynamic and understanding and like caring first about what people's needs and wants are outside of, I mean, it's very admirable to me. I mean, there's a lot of ways to look at this, but life is a pretty vast thing for a lot of people, and for every single person. And I think that we understand that there's some bigger things. I mean, Court has about to have two kids. We're within about a month and a half of birth of his second, a boy. He's already had a beautiful girl, Kaya. We're all godparents too, not legally, but we've made that decision. And
he didn't have a choice in that matter, I take it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he didn't at all. I got to see her last night actually, so it was a lot of fun. She's growing, and I use that example because we went through a lot of like, we are thinking we're going to have Kai is going to be born in the next, I've got 3 weeks before her due date and 3 weeks after her due date that I can't play anywhere. And not a single person in the band was like, dude, but what about? And we're just like, yeah, for sure. Like, that's part of what we do. You're part of this band. We take care of each other. And that's a very smaller piece of it all. But I think that to me can almost sum up what we're doing. We all, first off, really breathe this being able to do what we can here and play music. It's all about, well, anytime we're touring, if there's like, hey, so-and-so's playing down the street after y'all are done, it's like, let's go. We have a fun time exploring. And I think I've done my biggest growth in this world being able to tour and meet new folks and learn about these folks. And it's an interesting, and you'll definitely understand what I'm saying from this, but there's almost, I wouldn't say a scared is the word I want to use, but it's not the right, I'm not using it in the right tense or what the word I want to say, but there's a traveling and going to play at a venue you've never been, in a state you've never been in, and you show up and you're the opening band, or you are a headlining band and the opener shows up. Those are your people. And it's like, hey man, like, tell me about this room, or like, where were y'all last night? And there's just like, oh, y'all are on the same trip as we are.
Yep.
And it's beautiful to be able to, I really think that's been my biggest growth, and to understand that you meet people you know this, and I think most people should know this, but it's just an extra double down of, there's so many people doing so many different things, so many different ways, but there's so many right ways that you can do that and be learning and growing yourself. And it's, of course, you meet people that you're like, these aren't our people.
Yeah.
But that is far less, I think, than I find myself meeting people that are there because they're looking to do something, to grow and to connect. Yeah, that's a way better. That's perfect. Yeah, it's always been a really neat thing. And that maybe with the band, we want to connect musically, we want to connect together spiritually, and as people, we want to be able to know that we're here for each other no matter what kind of turn we get hit with. And this has been, having Sam on Sunday, we talk a lot about trying to benefit the band and keep people that, these are our guys. We are going to do whatever we can to make sure we're helping and kind of getting us through this period and getting back out there and playing some more shows together. We saw each other last night. We all got together at Courts in Winston, and we were able to play some songs. So it really is always, we all just leave laughing and thinking, man, this is awesome. We had, probably a month ago, we were able to do it for the first time. And it's just been, that's maybe how I know. I'm not sure I can tell you a better way, but being able to show up and not see these guys for 4 months, 5 months, and not see them for another month, it really just, it changes, it brightens up my week to be able to get back and talk and play and know that they care as much about what we're doing. And that might be, I really kind of gotten long-winded on this, so I'm sorry.
But. Oh, you're good. You're good. Yeah, I think talking about like the touring and stuff, it's hard being on the side that we're on sometimes to explain it necessarily to even like significant others. I know sometimes like explaining it to people that don't go out and do it and don't have those interactions and those experiences. But I think what it also does is I've noticed an ability to kind of see the interconnectedness in everything, but let alone specifically in our case with that scenario is like, you couldn't be playing that show in said town in Florida if there wasn't a venue or buyer that was willing to book your band for that show.
For sure.
And then a lot of times if it's your first time to that market, you don't have any fan base, then you need a local band to support, or to either for your band to support, so that you can be introduced to those fans and start to build that following. So if you kind of compare that and translate that to life in general, I've kind of started to come to this like belief that really literally everything is connected. You can't have the yin without the yang. You can't have the love without the hate. And that's sad in some ways, because we'd be much better off if we all live with love and a little less hate. But the reality is, you kind of have to know what one thing is to know what the opposite of it is as well. And that interconnectedness is super important, both from a fan to consumer, or a musician, songwriter to consumer, fan kind of thing as well. And then you kind of transitioned it back into, obviously, the joy and the purpose that you find is like showing up with these guys that you haven't been able to play with comparatively to as at least amount of time as to what you have been over the last year prior to 2020.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of is a good segue for like what you and I exchanged a few things before, and that kind of what I claim is our second segment on the podcast, since we're talking in terms of Sam on Sunday with all y'all's segments, you know.
Yeah. Good
Um,
luck. Good luck keeping up with those segments.
Man, those are great segments though, man. That's what keeps it interesting, you know what I mean? And it's as opposed to my live streams where it's just me and a guitar, you know, talking.
Well, that's ultimately that's all you need, and that goes back to what we are just saying. Is like if you can't connect. Well, I was telling you that when we were planning getting together. Is if ultimately if people don't want to watch that part of the show, it doesn't matter if we have a 30-second segment talking about a quote
Yeah.
from some musician. It's like no one cares about that if they don't care about the show itself or the communication. And so it's so many levels to that. But like you said, I think trying to continue to search for that purpose, which I think changes a lot, and that might be a big thing to take away from that. You can always start to fine tune and make things better for yourself or a larger group as we learn. And I think that's probably something that people drop the ball, especially during this time. I think I agree with you that there's definitely there probably has to be some hate for us to be able to understand the power of love, as much as that sounds like the weirdest or number one sentence that anyone's ever said. But
yeah.
I do think there's a chance to tip that scale in that same way. I think there's always going to be hate, but it'd be super cool if we could start to be like, that guy, why don't you learn a little something here? That guy, you're coming to our side.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that is possible. And I know you do too, but I think that maybe we can have like a world we live in where hate's like at a 20% value.
Right.
I don't think we're there now, but it'd be nice to start working our way down.
Yeah, no doubt. I was listening to a Ram Dass talk recently this week earlier as a podcast, and I don't even know what year this talk was from, because he is of course passed away from the physical realm, as he says. But so this was years ago, but he was talking in relation to maybe it was a political year, an election year, or something similar to like what we're in now. But he was talking about how you can't, and there's no way that I can phrase it in the way that mind does, but essentially saying like, even if you have an adversary from a political landscape perspective, to be talking in the terms of it's their fault, or they did this, or they can't do that. You have to figure out a way to approach it to where you can be accepting of the adversary in a sense, but also willing to kind of find, not, and this sounds again too simplistic, but the commonalities enough to be able to work through those challenges together, as opposed to just saying you're wrong, they're wrong, we're right. And I feel like it's, you know, it's super relevant to the time we live in today, because from both sides, seeing that we're in this two-party system, not to get political on it, but I do see both sides pointing the finger at the other, and it's a shame sometimes that we're in that place, you know.
Well, the majority of the time we're just saying the other person is not right, and I think it's weird that, and again, same with me. It's funny how much you remove the commonality and the personal, I am a human being as well, once you get in a political realm, that it's I think about that a lot, and I don't know if this translates. I hope it does, because I think that a lot, especially right now, there's a lot of people that are like, that person doesn't think about this the way I do, they're out. I'm never talking to that person again. And I'm not saying that's not ever the case, but I have a hard time with that. I think I've got a growing and very diverse group of people that I try and spend a bunch of time with all the time. Obviously that means a little something different now, but and I think I've always learned from the people that I've learned from everyone in the growing group that we have. And I think people are very quick to not think about the people they spend time with in a closed circle, that, oh, well, this guy doesn't think like I do, but we've been friends forever, so that's different in some respect. And I don't, it's funny that people have that mental block to, I mean, again, there's right now, I do think that I'm not sure. I mean, I hope just from a perspective of people, we can do something to start, finding a more common ground, a more commonality to that. Because it seems once you start at all talking about politics, that nobody ends up saying, well, this person, they know nothing. If this is what they say, their platform, reads, then there's no way I'm going to listen to what they have to say. And I think that, of course, is easier to say right now than it is in a lot of circumstances. But it is definitely we're in a place that I think people could. It's almost like people shut their brains off, and I don't even know how to. I mean, I'll talk to friends about, what about this, and then be able to try and bring up a very, in my opinion, similar circumstance, but it's not in this like hot bed right now. It's like, oh well, that has nothing to do with this,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I think
Nothing is.
we're all a little too quick to say this is right, and then, well, whatever this is that may have some correlation, I'm not going to let that happen.
Yeah.
I refuse to let the two meld or see the other side in that way.
Yeah. And generally speaking, if you're talking in like terms of politics and ideology and or platforms of what a party is running on, I think it's really challenging in a sense because a lot of people have very specific things about one point of view that is very important to them. And the reality is there are so many different topics along the scale or along the line of what needs to be talked about from a political landscape standpoint, that what is important to you might not be as important to me or to whomever else we're talking to. And that can create challenges, but
Sure.
in the bigger picture of it all, I think, and this goes back to a little bit of what some of the stuff that I sent you as far as things I wanted to talk about, is the framework of the mindset that, we're never going to solve or begin to solve problems if we kind of stay in the same realm of thinking that we were in when these problems have been created. And in that way, if you're talking about like the common or the current political landscape, I mean, a lot of these problems that we're talking about right now are coming to light more so now. And maybe when we grew up, we were told, such as some of the social injustices with racism and persons of color not having some of the certain liberties or abilities to live their life. I was raised in the sense that was from the past, and that we're not in that. And that's not necessarily, I'm not pointing that in the sense of my family taught me wrong. It's just a reality of sometimes when we didn't live through those things that happened back then, it's easy to feel like that we've progressed beyond them, but obviously we're still fighting a lot of those things. And that leads to, some of the quotes I share with you were from a book called 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And the first quote I think I shared is a perfect,
read that one out.
Perfect talking point. Yeah. The significant problems we face cannot be solved at the same level of thinking we were at when we created them. And I mean, for those that aren't familiar with the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, that is a book written by Stephen Covey. And as I've introduced in the first episode of this podcast, that's part of the concept here is really challenging my friends and folks that I'm interviewing, such as you, Sam, to think critically about some of these quotes that I'm finding and or share quotes that maybe, hopefully, you as a listener will step back and kind of ponder these things and think a little bit critically about them and how you can apply them to your life, and maybe they'll help. And if nothing else, it's at least a conversation topic for us. But it's
more than that. It's more than that. I agree, and I think that is what I think we all should do. My take from that, not to steal your baton here if it's not time, but I think in reading that, and I'll read it again just so I can have it fresh. The significant problems we face cannot be solved at the same level of thinking we were at when we created them. I think really for me, I think it almost reads as a group message. But I honestly think if you start with, to me, that's being honest with yourself. And I think we're very quick to, again, with where we're living, especially, that if we have something going on, but it's messing up with it, or it's instead of facing this and really thinking critically, like you're saying, the point of these quotes in the show are about, I think we're all a little too, I say all, there's a quicker spot to say like, well, this is who I am kind of thing, or these are the things that I believe, in a way that we're shutting off the ability to say, you don't have to, there's nothing wrong with changing your mind. And I think that in a weird way shows that we, instead of being someone so worried about being wrong or being called out for being wrong, that it's just so easy. I'm I'm bad about this because I give a lot of people shit about saying right away, and I think it might take away from what my how my apology sounds if it is not sincere enough. Because if something goes wrong, I'm right away saying, "Hey, I'm sorry for this, and let me know how this is. I will work on fixing that for us in the future, and I'll make a mental note of that." And I think that's for some reason, and well, I say for some reason, I still struggle with that too. Depending, there are different levels to what we think we are for sure right about, and I think that is elevating to this point that we're talking about is rethink, or I guess not even things you're sure you're right about. I think it is maybe think maybe not. Maybe there's a chance that this isn't correct, and just living with some possibility of you being wrong, I think makes me feel so much less pressure. I mean, if someone's like, "Hey, man, what do you think about this?" I'm like, "I don't know." Like, I don't know anything. Tell me more about it. I don't feel the need to try and make you feel like I know it. I'd rather learn it. And I think that in a way, I for sure have those too. It sounds like I'm saying y'all need to catch up, but and then not at all. It just seems it's so difficult. I feel like the more trouble that I have in, and again, small troubles most of the time, but in my larger circles of just people that I always interact with, it's uh, reaching a point where someone's like, "Oh, well, we've gotten to like my I don't budge from here point, so we're doubling down, and there's nothing to learn here." And I think that that is probably always the wrong answer, whether it's been me that's done it or anyone else. You can learn from, even if you were sitting in your brain's about to bust and a conversation with somebody about like, "I've really taken so much of this in." I think there's never a time when it's like, "No, I'm done taking in what you have to say." I think listening, as you said to start this, is I thought that was great too, to be able. We just miss a lot of that. That those are connected to me. If I know I'm right, I don't have to listen to what you said about
Right.
it. I mean, it doesn't matter what you said about it.
Well, and
And
you talked about like I think our society has trained us, maybe intentionally or maybe not intentionally, but to protect ourselves in so many different ways, and a lot of that comes from fear. But also when you're in the context of what we're talking about, I look at it a little bit of a sense of it's a fear of being wrong, as you mentioned, or what you start to do is build this defensive nature about your beliefs and all these things that you think you know the answer to. But if we can learn to let go of that a little bit and realize that in the grand scheme of things, we're all going to end up in the same place from a physical form standpoint. You can believe what you
sure,
want to in a standpoint of religion and where we go beyond this this life form physically, right? But the reality is that like if we don't find the time to really slow down and determine what is important to us, but why is that important? And that's where I think sometimes when it comes to some of these political conversations, we get so worked up, but a lot of that defensive nature comes from the stuff that we've been fed from the media, from just the
right,
stuff that our culture and society was built on. And it's really hard sometimes to separate those things if you don't detach yourself from that, like I know. And
right,
I mean, to your point, I'm no guru by any means. Like I haven't figured it all out, but that's part of my journey, and I think all of our journeys is working through these things. And if we can at least engage in conversation about it and begin to listen more, begin to open up a little bit more without putting up that defensive wall, I think it helps everything. And to your
totally,
point, really, I mean, it's ultimately about finding peace within internally. I think individually, for me, that's what I'm kind of in the pursuit of, and what comes along with that peace is finding more sense of purpose in life, and to move on to the next quote that Stephen came from this book is most people struggle with life balance simply because they haven't paid the price to decide what is really important to them. And for me, I'll read that one more time. Most people struggle with life balance simply because they haven't paid the price to decide what is really important to them. And you can go in a lot of directions with that quote, but what I found in 2020 that is super relevant for me is that the more I'm making time, setting aside time to sit in quiet meditation, prayer, call it what you will, the more I'm learning about what is really important to me. And 2019, you can attest to this. Like when we're on the road all the time, either playing shows or for me producing events, working with, clients to produce events, it's hard to find moments of silence to like sit in a quiet
For sure.
area. You're, whether it's media, whether it's radio, there's just constantly content being pushed down our throat. So it's really, I think, something that if we could all do it a little bit more, we'd probably find a hell of a lot of value out of it.
Yeah, I think that we are all, I mean, again, this is just another coined phrase, but we're all creatures of habit, right? So I think that I hope that is something, and I know that for a lot of people, and myself included for a while, I think you and I have had similar experiences, it seems, through this, that I've really, I mean, there was definitely a point when I was like, I don't know what I am going to do. And it helps that maybe we're all in the entertainment field, we're all at least able to say like, what do you think we're going to do? And I've been like, trying to learn a little bit from the glean something from these folks that, being able to take something and build for myself as well. And being in that habit of saying, well, this is how busy my life is, or this is how much I have going on, or this is what's important to me. I do think that starts to clamp off the ability to grow, or the ability to say like, that sounds kind of fun, I'll try it out. Or I don't I don't know, I kind of look at that too within having a reaching out, having a different experience. And maybe I'm taking this in a really different direction, but having to think about what is important, maybe I mean, I'm making this so rudimentary, but having an experience that maybe didn't go well for you the first time, but it seems that you've got this, man, you got to come, or we've got to have, we had a great time. This will be a little different. And I think it's hard for people to feel like, why would this be any different? And maybe that's a trust thing as well. And again, I'm taking kind of a different path on this. I just think I would like to have a more open feeling. I feel like I am at a point in my life where I am pretty ready to share, or like, hey, hold on, like, seems like you're worked up. Let me tell you what I'm thinking. Or here's what's got me worked up. And like, I really want to start finding, like, checking off some boxes about like, I've had this same, I've hit this same wall for 4 different times of my attempt. Why do I keep hitting this wall? And I use that more with my personal connections. It starts to really get to me that, hey, we seem to have had this disagreement with a friend, or with my partner, or with a family member, that for whatever reason we hit a, you find yourself hitting the same, like, wow, I think we did this last week, or me and you had this talk last time we went on vacation, or last time we were at the bar, we ended this conversation this way. And it almost seems like once we start hearing something going down a path that we can find a way to veer and rectify it, once it starts to look at all like, this is the same thing we're doing, I'm not talking about this again. And I think that again goes back to, I really appreciate your overall view of this show, because I think we're really selling ourselves short in a way that I don't know if we're not exactly trusting. And this is again me too. I don't know if we're not trusting our other person in this communication, or the other group in this communication, that I don't think you understand me, or whatever, that wherever we find ourselves in that moment, it's tough to feel that we're hitting a wall that I do think we have the ability to get over. And that's the toughest part. I mean, I do think we are, or at least politically, I'd say both sides would tell you the other side has chosen not to climb the wall, and not to use the wall. We shouldn't have the wall, just
We
in
should
case
just
we
tear
have
the
to.
wall down, but
Yeah, just think
yeah.
also for that perspective.
Yeah, I mean, it is certainly, the political landscape is always going to be a tough one, and that's, for me, that's where I do, and I'm guilty of kind of shutting that off and steering
Me too.
clear of
I'll
it.
be the first to say that. Yeah, no one, don't look at me as I'm not going to be able to give you great political advice. Anyone
Yeah,
listening, or you, just letting you know.
but I think if we could, in some ways, separate the political conversation with the humanity conversation, we would all
Right.
be a little bit better, because more times than not, even folks that I know in my life that sway on a certain political spectrum to be like maybe super conservative from their political voting beliefs, but if you actually sit down and have conversations about some of the more socioeconomic issues, a lot of what they're saying tends to lean maybe a little more middle of the road, or
Yeah, for
even
sure.
left leaning, if you want to say it that way. And but we have to be willing in some ways to approach that in a little bit different manner. Like we talked about, like Stephen Covey's quote, like if we're approaching it with the same mentality and coming from the same place of fear or distrust or whatever it is, then we're never going to, maybe never's not the right way, but the likelihood of us having the ability to actually move beyond that in productive conversation is
Right.
much less.
Just keep hitting the wall.
Yeah. So, but yeah, man, I mean, I appreciate you being willing to dive into that a little bit. And I think, hopefully as a listener, if you're listening to the show, you can kind of have your own thoughts about this as we're talking about it. And as I've said in other episodes, like shoot both Sam and I a comment and or questions or thoughts on that too.
Please do.
Love to engage with those folks that are hopefully listening as well. Well, that'll kind of lead us into like the third segment, I would say, then, with maybe coming either from your personal perspective or even from Time Sawyer's perspective. And maybe it can even tie into your Sam on Sundays, but are there any kind of, it doesn't have to be social justice type programs or organizations, but what do you guys really, what's really important to you as a band and or to you personally, Sam, as far as a way that we as individuals can maybe get involved either locally, regionally, or in some way kind of help push forward this progressiveness, not in the political term, but in a way of like helping others.
Right. Making progress. Yeah. I would say we're doing quite a bit of, it's been interesting because I do think there's been, I'm not really sure the right way to say this. There has been a political push that is now kind of pushed to light this, like, well, if these are things, here's some things that you can do to hopefully help in a form of, whether it be monetary or donation of time. It's, we have tried to use our Sam on Sunday platform to raise some money for things that are important to us in a way that are really talking about what we're dealing with now. We've done a fundraiser for Second Harvest Food Bank of Metro Atlanta. We actually also did a great venue in upstate New York, Galway, New York, and we did their 40th anniversary of the venue. The Cock and Bull is an amazing, amazing place. Maybe best food you'll ever have, and also just a very warm and inviting atmosphere, both from the producers of the spot as well as from just the people that are coming to hear the music. And we raised money for the Galway Food Bank as well, and the same for their 40th anniversary party. And we've also raised some money, having half the band live in Charlotte and half in Winston-Salem. We raised money for the NAACP in Charlotte, Mecklenburg chapter, and for the Winston-Salem Urban League. And I do think that is really important. I do think there's like you alluded to a little bit, I think I grew up in the same, I would say my family has always been very progressive in a social sense, and to use social justice as the term. We have definitely grew up with some of that same feeling as you had in a smaller town. I think that we had less, and I don't want to say very little because I'm sure that is also incorrect. I don't want to say shelter. That's not the correct word, but I also hope might be a better word. I was growing up with, we are moving or have moved, as you said, past this, it seems. And that I do think about that a lot, as I'm sure you do in this time we live now, because I feel like that's disconnected me from a lot of it has been cathartic to talk with a lot of my friends who are living in those moments much closer than me, and to get a better perspective. And that's kind of what's to tie back into kind of our central theme. I think that it's tough to tell somebody that, no, you're not having any trouble. And we could really get way off here and get down that hole, but that's that same thing, to trust and not live in I think fear is for sure connected, but not in the way that I'm trying to use it here, that I'm not going to tell you I know anything. And if you've got a huge group of people saying that we need to look at some of this stuff, I don't know where I think I get off to say, I don't think so.
Yeah.
And I need to tell as many people as I know that.
Yeah.
And I feel fortunate that we have places like this to talk about that. We have so many other places that people are willing to say, hey, let's give it a run. Let's see if this has some legs, because I care about these folks, and I care about the people that are close to me and folks that I'm not even in any way connected to, that I don't have any reason to say that you were wrong.
Right.
And I would love to see a shift in that from some other folks. And I think that really that has been the facade, or the curtain to hide behind via the internet, to be able to really not have to have these conversations, but be able just to grab a megaphone and type something out on the computer and then leave it. And if someone says something you don't like, it's almost like you were looking for that to say, like, let me double down for you.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I think that takes us away from our communications, and living now in a space where that is how we are, if you want to call it progress, that is how the band is continuing to grow and move forward, is this same place that I think we have so much divisive nature. So maybe I hope that hidden, that is some of what I hope the show is bringing to people, is we are trying to build a community of folks that we're here really to just take the edge off first on a Sunday night. Anyone that wants to listen, please join us. Anyone that wants to talk, we've really turned it into a community feel of, we're sitting there and talking with people most of the time, and adding segments and learning songs from people that want us to, hey, learn this one, see if you can do it by next week. And I don't know, I feel very indebted to the people that have continued to show support for, again, you definitely have seen this locally and nationally on well, I think where there's a whole other thing to talk about music venues nationally. We're sitting in a pretty tough spot, but locally it's easy for us to see in Charlotte that there's so much care. And that helps me to see that there's always going to be, well, like we said, there's so much of this love and hate that I do think there are some times when I can see that we can tip the scale, and we just try to find a way to keep that weight where it needs to be. And we're hoping to continue to really awareness. And I hate that term is always kind of like exposure in the music world. It's like, dude, come on, I got exposure waiting for you.
Well,
come up. But that's, hopefully that there are some, and that's that same thing about saying there's a lot of people right now that if someone uses the word exposure in an email, that band shuts it down. It's like, okay, there's nothing for me here. And I think you can connect that a lot to, there's definitely something to take from that. It might not be worth it at the time, but you can always see where that weight lies. If the exposure is, well, it's on us to some degree, but we have the ability to turn this into something if we want to take that chance. Or there's also nothing wrong with saying, like, hey, this isn't necessarily for us this time around. But I think people, it's you have the ability, as you would say, I draw from one of my favorite inspirational movies of all time, Life is What You Make It. And that is from Joe Dirt, my friend.
Yeah, from Joe Dirt. And that is so relevant. Regardless of the scenario or the situation you're talking about, it really is. And yeah, I applaud what you with Sam and Sunday and the team at Time Sawyer have done, because
thank you, man.
A, as we talked about earlier, you're staying relevant, but also B, you're using that platform as an opportunity not only to stay relevant to your craft and to your art and to what you guys love to do, but also to shine some awareness and exposure to some of these other things that are important to you. And we see it as an industry, being that both we're working in it from a musician and event producer side of things, that the industry has certainly taken an impact, a pretty negative hit on the impact level. And, to be able to support venues, I know they very much appreciate it. And I think you have done a great job of building a community. And it's funny because you mentioned the social media platforms have been obviously and can be, and seems in this climate that we're in, especially a election year, become very divisive. But it's all about what I call like productive use of that time for yourself or for the platform that you're putting out there. And again, I applaud what you guys are doing. And for folks that are maybe just getting introduced to Sam and Time Sawyer, please head over to their social media pages. I'll include all that in the show notes, and check out what they have going on and support the causes. If you're local to Charlotte, I know the Second Harvest Food Bank, I've been involved with some of their stuff, and this year was really a critical opportunity for them to provide to a lot of families that had the need under this situation. People are out of work, and kids and
youth and the elderly
kids,
especially.
Thanks for all that you guys have done. And thanks again for being here, and for all the listeners, please do go follow Sam and all of the Time Sawyer stuff. So we'll wrap it up on that. Thanks again, everybody, for tuning in. Sam, thank you. Tell all the cats at Time Sawyer I appreciate them too. And
I definitely will.
And one other thing we didn't get to talk about, but I will include some links to this, but Reefstock, do you want to give a quick little rundown of what the Reefstock Festival is? That's in Elkin, North Carolina, right? Obviously didn't happen this year, but...
Yeah, I really will let this be a little bit just of a tail end piece. Check out reevstock.com. It's our music festival. We've started in Elkin. We're actually, it's a benefit festival as well. It would have been our 10th year this year, which is kind of funny if you want to think about it that way. But we're going to come back for a redo for our 10th anniversary next year, we hope. So y'all stay in touch with us there. We've got a Facebook page as well. And really looking forward to getting back to that. It's like I was saying, a benefit festival as well. We're raising money for our local scholarships in town. We have 3 local area high schools that we're raising money for right now for 3 different scholarships, but hoping to continue to grow that and grow the festival and continue to hopefully just give. The real start for that was to give our locals something, not that we being a small town, continue to try and find ways to get people to connect and be together is, I mean, I guess no different than a larger city, but we've made that a focus of what we want to do with the festival and show people. I mean, like we talked about Bristol right starting the show, there's so many festivals that kind of echo the good of what we're all a release or trying to get and connect with somebody. And again, I think that's kind of my point these days in life, and to find a better way to do that, and always looking to find a better way to do that. So I appreciate you giving me the option on your show, and I appreciate that being your point or your driven point here to try and continue to do that. So Tayloe, thanks for the time today, man.
Yeah, thank you, man. Check it out, everybody. Reefstock.com, TomSawyer.com.
Yes.
TomSawyer.com. Signing off, TW here. Thanks, Sam. We will see everybody on the next episode. So please give us some reviews on iTunes, Spotify, however you do that, or however you digest podcasts. Cheers, everybody. Have a good one.